Patty, are you ready to push?
Oh.
We're first.
No, we're starting 25
We're
minutes
25 minutes late.
I'm 25 minutes off of mine.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. It looks like everyone is here. It is October 1st, 2024, Committee of the Whole. I'm Pam Cotter. I will be conducting. First thing we need is the approval of minutes. Are there any corrections or questions on the minutes? No. If not, I will take a motion for the minutes of short-term rental workshop, July 27th, 2024, Committee of the Whole, September 10th, 2024. And I will take both at the same time.
It's August 27th, not July 27th, it's wrong on it.
Oh, July what?
August 27th.
Oh, August, sorry, August. Sorry, we'll make correction on that. August 27th, 2024. Thank you, Councilmember Hawk, for catching that. Do I have a motion on those two sets of minutes?
I move that we approve both minutes for August 27th and September 10th.
Okay, do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, everyone say aye. Aye. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now we're on discussion item number 1. Update and discussion on the drafting of the form-based code. Zachary Smallwood and Mark Morris of VODA, not VODA like I said the last time. Landscape.
Well, you weren't wrong.
It is, that's how it's spelled.
Okay, and planning presentation. You have 45 minutes. Go.
Well, I was just going to turn it over to Mark here. We've been working, Diane and Adam here are both on the steering committee as well as with a planning commissioner and staff, and I think we're making some good progress. Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Mark to kind of go over some of the fun that we've had.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the time this afternoon to talk through form-based code. Like Zach mentioned, we've been working the last few months with Diane and Adam and others to work through the main questions, considerations with the form-based code. We had a public meeting in September that we had great feedback and attendance from, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but wanted to give you an overview of kind of where we are, what we're talking about with the form-based code. It is very much a new language to learn, and so we want to make sure that you have the information you have, the right questions. When we're done and the code has been adopted, Diane and Adam will be your experts. So we want to make sure, Mark, we want to make sure that everyone feels like you understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and provide some input and feedback. And so when we get to the point where we start going through an adoption process, you have the information that you need. You may have constituents asking questions and things like that. We want to make sure that you feel equipped to do that. So the form-based code, generally one of the primary maps that you'll consult, the first question that you'll ask is what we call a form district. A form district is really the closest corollary you might have to a zone. So this area currently is all under the MCCD zone. With the form-based code, what we do is we break it down into sub-districts so that we can be a little more context sensitive. And the MCCD zone, it basically applies the same requirements across a large area. The form-based code recognizes that what might be appropriate on State Street may not be appropriate in other areas of the city center area. So the first page of the packet there is a draft of that form district map. We'll go through each one of these form districts and kind of talk broadly about what that means. When someone walks in the door and says, I have a property in the city center area, the first question we're going to ask is, okay, which form district are we talking about? The things in a form-based code that generally get the most attention are building height, parking, setbacks. Those are the things that are kind of the main questions. Use is a consideration in form-based code, but it's not the first question we ask. What we're doing is giving property owners a lot more leeway, a lot more flexibility with the use of what they're proposing, and really focused on how does this address the street? How does it fit in with the context of the city center area? If you have questions as we go along, please by all means, let's talk through those. So what we've done is we've again kind of broken down the city center area into smaller categories. The neighborhood corridor farm district, we're looking at the properties facing 4800 South. This would really be something that would be in keeping with kind of what's already going on along this corridor, 4800 South. So heights, we're talking 2 and 3 stories, so things that are really in line with what's already on 4800 South. This isn't really an area where you would want to go taller than that. The uses that we're looking at would be kind of neighborhood focused uses. So we're talking housing, neighborhood services and retail. Just a couple kind of example images there of what those might look like.
Can you tell me why we have a minimum height?
Yeah, that's a good question. Generally with the form-based code, most of the requirements are a range. And so we've got this range that someone can choose within that. For the most part, when we're looking at an area like this where we're trying to encourage an increase in activity, we want to set a minimum as well. And so hence we've got a minimum of 2 stories.
And what will 2 stories do that 1 story won't?
Well, if we're trying to bring in more mixed use, if we have a proposal and someone says, I want, on the ground floor, I want to do retail, office, things like that, an upper story would kind of double the capacity of that particular property. What that upper floor might be residential, it could also be office. We're really just trying to increase that activity. So when you have redevelopment, you're kind of signing up for another 50 years of use of a property. And so where we have properties that are already at 1 story, if we're gonna redevelop, let's try to encourage an increase in use.
Thank you.
So,
I'm gonna push on this a little bit.
Yeah.
So in this neighborhood corridor, if we did 1 to 3, what's the downside instead of 2 to 3?
you could certainly do 1 to 3, but I think again, if you're getting redevelopment activity, trying to encourage, going from 1 to 2 stories, you kind of double the amount of square footage. So, going through redevelopment and staying with 1 story, you're kind of, at break even. Trying to encourage an increase in activity is kind of at the heart of it. So, and if you feel like you want to leave that kind of minimum at 1 story, that's what we're here to talk about. So, and again, none of these things have been decided. This is really just a draft to kind of spur some conversation. The kind of center of the city center area we call Civic Center Farm District. This building is kind of at the center of all of those things. The intent with a lot of these uses would be, how do we activate kind of the center of the city center area? You've built a beautiful new building and you've got this big public space. How do we make sure that any redevelopment that happens around this area activates the public space that you've already got? So we're talking potentially, more entertainment, recreation, more housing, office, all of the things that could kind of activate existing spaces. You have a lot of kind of parking lots and lower density buildings. How do we kind of use the redevelopment to activate some of these spaces? So minimum height in this area as drafted 3 stories, maximum height 6. And again, this is a range that a property owner can kind of decide what works for them, what pencils for their particular property, but again, to kind of increase activity.
Is this in block 1, this blue,
Part of it.
part of it?
Part of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the frontage on state and block
Right.
1. Yeah,
because it's between 3 and 6, and
correct.
So, just for an idea,
Sure.
do we know how tall this building is compared to 3-story building or a 7-story building?
It's tall for a 3-story.
That's what I'm saying, so.
Yeah.
I think these are 15-foot ceilings, which
Yeah.
typically it's typically about 12. So, yeah.
So it's be more like a 4-story height, where like we're building 3 more stories on top of that, another 30 plus feet on top of this one. Height-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah.
allow that, we need to know that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was, and I'll kind of steal some of Mark's thunder
Yeah,
there.
go ahead.
So we actually dictate, the stories, but then also on this as well is we say what your heights,
Maximum height. Yeah.
like, well, for what a story can be. So it's between, a certain number of feet, from like, I don't remember what the ground floor was. We were doing like 12 to 24 or something like
Yeah,
that.
so height is regulated in 2 ways. Rather than just saying, here's how many stories it can be, we say, okay, ground level floors can be this range, upper level floors can be this range. So you're kind of doing both of those. But, and we can get into that further, but really you're saying, okay, here's the maximum height. If you were to max out that range, here's the total height that a building could be. In this particular district, the intent is again to have things that are kind of similar in height and density to this building. The higher allowance there, that's 6 stories, and we'll talk more about it. I think where you've got redevelopment, where structured parking is going to happen, taller heights is really necessary in order for that to be feasible. You can't just mandate, structured parking, or the rents in that building are going to be astronomically high. And so having higher limits is really the intent there to say, okay, the goal to make this an active city center area, we have to allow some taller buildings.
And let me clarify as well, when he says rents, it doesn't necessarily just mean residential rents, but also commercial rents would be astronomically high.
Right. So so those kind of go together. Parking, as you know, dictates everything, and how do we make sure that we're not, cutting off that potential, that possibility.
And the 5 stories, and that's with a step back. I guess I have some concerns about that.
We hadn't gotten to that, but we're here now.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
I'm sorry.
yeah, and that's
That just got my focus, okay.
yeah. So this that you're referring to, Diane, what we call the Boulevard Farm District are these properties that are fronting on State Street. We've heard a lot of feedback and information that sticking with the historic kind of 3-story maximum along State Street is where everyone felt comfortable. I think having development along State Street that feels like it fits in with what people have known this stretch of Murray to be. And so having that 3-story limit, but then allowing taller if it's set back from the street. So if you're looking down State Street, you're kind of seeing 3-story buildings. If someone wants to go taller, there has to be a certain amount of setback back from the street. So like, for example, Block 1, if that were to redevelop, you would have 3-story buildings along that State Street frontage. And then if something were to go taller, it would have to be, set back some number that we'll determine in order to kind of keep in with that historic development pattern.
Do you have an illustration of that?
I don't, but we can certainly put one together, what that would look like. And again, I think if, we have redevelopment happening in lots of places over the next 20, 30 years, how do we make sure that it fits in with what's, the character of State Street, but also allow us, if we are going to have structured parking, how do we make that feasible in a place like this where land is limited? You don't have, a lot of land to work with. We'll get a kind of a graphic put together that we can
Okay,
talk through,
that'd be great.
of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Before you get into transit district,
Yeah,
our packets don't have that. We have 2 neighborhood corridors. I just noticed that here.
Yes, Zach.
That was my fault.
Zach and Phil caught that the other day. Well, it was my fault because we put the same one in twice. But yeah, I'll send a PDF that you'll have both of those. So, okay. So the one that you're missing is which?
Transit.
This one.
This one.
The gray one, or whatever color it is?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this one that you're missing in your packet, this one we call the transit neighborhood, and we'll talk through some of the considerations here. This area, we're really looking at how does this integrate with the tracks and Front Runner station that you've got directly to the south, or to the southwest. when we look at a form-based code, we're looking at the next 20, 30 years. Ideally, we would have more developed focused around transit service, which we're already seeing up and down the Wasatch Front. Hence, this area is kind of where we have drafted the code to say this height would actually be taller than other form districts. So, and this is a typo. So it actually, currently we're at 8 stories in the code as drafted. We'd started at 10. In order to have kind of, again, the context, looking at 8 stories as a maximum, 4 stories as a minimum in the kind of transit neighborhood form district. And one of the reasons that we said that might make sense to go higher there, if this were to become more housing or things that really would benefit from access to tracks and Front Runner, having more availability of housing in that part of the city center area would make a lot of sense. With the topography of your city center, where Vine kind of dips down a little bit as you head west, those taller buildings wouldn't be as visually apparent, where you're kind of down a little bit of a slope, as it were, towards the tracks area. This particular,
We talked at one point in time about doing a map showing that where it would look with the incline
Sure.
right there. Have we
Yeah.
done that?
Not yet. We'll look at the renderings of kind of flat map, but we haven't put in that.
And is it-
template.
Could we do, in this district, could we do it so it's shorter on the top of that hill like we do on the boulevard? And then when it's lower, the heights could be higher, so it's not visually as imposing. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, we could talk through that as an option. The public open house, that we'll talk more about it in a minute, but it was interesting talking about this part of the city center and those heights. Everyone has, opinions on height and all that. What we're trying to do is kind of concentrate those heights in areas that would make sense from a visual standpoint and also from a functional standpoint. That, having housing near transit, that's a huge benefit, access to jobs, all of those things. But yeah, we can put together something that will kind of illustrate how that might work. And again, this is a range. Someone may come along and say, 4 stories is really the max that I would like. But giving that flexibility to property owners. Where you've got IMC just to the south of us, and they've got some pretty substantially tall buildings, again, we're looking at context and what kind of fits in. Citywide, when we think about, okay, where are we concentrating housing in the city? Where you're a city that's completely landlocked by other cities, you've got limited areas where you could add additional housing. And so concentrating that in specific areas in a city center where we want more people, we want more activity, we want more walkability, it makes a lot of sense to allow for more concentration of development. And again, to go back to structured parking, when someone is building housing, parking is an enormous consideration and expense. And so, again, allowing for that potential, if we are going to have concentration of housing, if we limit the heights, we're really limiting how much housing we're providing and what that housing is going to cost. So,
One thing I'd also like to just throw in there as well is that probably 2/3, I'd probably say, of this district is owned by Intermountain currently. It's that whole property next to Vine Street. So they control that entire apartment complex.
the apartments here on the south.
Yeah,
of Vine.
Intermountain
Yeah.
Healthcare owns that. And they do have, they are in the middle of doing some master planning for their campus for the next few years. I've seen a draft of that. I'm not at liberty to kind of go into a lot of that at the moment. But there's significant investment that's going to be happening over the next few years when it comes to Intermountain Medical Center. Yeah. It's killing me not to just blurt out everything that I know.
I just show
I know, I'm trying not to, but man.
I mean,
But
my whole thing was this would be great to be like the next Mayo Clinic of the West. Like, just the area with IMC, so
Yeah, and that's
whatever's to come.
kind of
is
their
to come.
goals. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's a real asset for your city, that you have this incredible health center. It's also surrounded by hundreds of acres of parking, which is a huge benefit, as well as, a potential space to, have some use for people. So I think, how do we figure out to make the city center and this large campus kind of feel like this is a well thought out approach?
I think that's something we as council need to consider, is always the maximum and the minimums.
Yeah.
We can't just say, oh, they'll build somewhere in the middle. Would we be okay with everything in there being the maximum? And if the answer is no, then we need to express what our desires are, what would we like to see. It says 3 to 6 stories. Would be okay with all 6 stories or all 3 stories in that area.
For just this area, or you mean every neighborhood?
Every neighborhood, but we just talked about this one right now.
This
so.
is where I like on the next page over, that graph that shows every district maxed out. The one that Pam's on right there, that top.
Oh, yes.
If everybody maxed out the height, that's what the area would look like.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think is important, especially talking about this transit neighborhood, is if you look on the State Street, that State Street part only goes 3 stories to try to keep that look, even though, so that area is kind of carved out on a different,
Yeah.
a different height requirement than the rest of the district to keep it uniform across State Street. So.
Yeah. Thanks for teeing that up, Adam. The last
Just for you, Mark.
the last form district this is also in this little neighborhood corridor. This district that's kind of the yellow on the east side there, call it residential transition. And that's really providing a little bit of buffer space between the neighborhood to the east and the kind of city center area. So this is where we've got lower heights, 2-story minimum, 3-story maximum. Again, providing some space where you could have redevelopment, but it would be something that would be neighborhood appropriate. We're talking row house and those types of development that would be perfectly fine across the street from the neighborhood that's directly there on the east. So.
What would that do with the east side of Center Street? Because it's currently the only side that is commercially zoned and set for height.
Yeah, so right now I anticipate, so there's a couple areas that we would be kind of carving out of the MCCD. So
Okay.
what we would do is probably rezone that to most likely residential, putting it back to where it was before. Because your house specifically.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Well, the reason why I ask is because, my house specifically, or even just on that side of the street, it's not, we won't be there forever.
Right.
So a part of that, what I think we've talked about even on those of us who live on that side of the street is those kind of transitioning to be a part of that makeup of whatever's coming downtown, whether it be businesses or whatever it may be, but not just residential.
Okay.
So kind of transitioning
And I guess
with that.
that's a good question to kind of bring up, is that we as the group here have indicated that was going to be the line, right? But if as a council you think it might be better to move that, residential transition.
It's a continuous debate that happens
I know.
between east and west on
Yeah.
Center Street. But it is something that people who do live on the west side of Center Street are fine with the zone because of those opportunities. I don't know, so
Maybe it's something.
so
that
just
we can
something to be
do.
aware of.
Because we've debated that line
Yeah.
multiple times in this meeting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
that's
maybe
good feedback.
maybe it's something to look at into maybe
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
including
and
it.
as you can see on the map here, we've carved out this line kind of along the back property line of those properties. But currently they are in that MCCD zone, but do we include them in
Yeah.
the form-based code?
And it could be something that we can continue to have a conversation, but
Sure,
I'm just saying, it is something that when MCCD was drawn up, it was the east side of the residents were fine with where it was.
Okay,
So,
it's good to know.
Okay.
or the west side, I should
Yeah.
say. The east side, not so much, but the west side was.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I think those are good points. I'm sure we'll talk about that tomorrow in our meeting.
Yep.
Okay, great. And as Adam mentioned, we've got this graphic that is really meant to show, again, okay, when we're talking heights and context, this is looking at, okay, what's the maximum building envelope where we've got three-story maximum, where we've got, taller maximums closer to the transit service. And again, these are just, okay, here's a building envelope. Where are the buildings actually, how they end up being planned out? This is really just kind of a study in heights. So you can see in the purple, that's our kind of civic center area. That's got that 6-story maximum along State Street, a 3-story, and then closer to Vine, that 8-story maximum.
Do you have any of the 5-story with the
We haven't really modeled how that would work yet, Diane, but we
Yeah,
can.
that's kind of new to me. I don't remember talking about 5-story with the 2-story.
Yeah, I think that came up in a meeting a while back, but we haven't really kind of codified or drafted any of that.
Okay,
But
because,
No,
yeah.
I remember just batting around a possibility, but I don't remember anything solidified.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering if it was before you came on to the.
yeah, it's been a while
It
back.
may have, because
Yeah.
I probably would have.
You brought it up. Yeah, we'll develop something graphically that kind of looks at what that might look like. I think where you've got block 1, where you've got some opportunity, those heights are going to be really key to what's feasible. What, if you have a development partner, what can they possibly do? Let's not set the heights in such a way that it makes it difficult. One thing we also, I think Adam, you had mentioned this at some point, having a similar requirement, even though this transit neighborhood form district is different, having a similar requirement on that State Street frontage that it would be at that 3-story maximum, at least for that. So that it fits in. If you're a person down on the street level and you're looking down, you've got a few buildings that kind of stick out. That's what we're trying to avoid, is to have things feel like context is a little more considered. This chart, Zach mentioned we've got 2 different ways to look at the heights of buildings. So we've got stories and then the floor height. So this calculates the maximum. If someone were to max out the absolute most they could go, here are the heights in each one of those, what would be possible. So residential transition, these parcels here on the east side, those would be, maximum would be 38 feet. That's kind of the shortest of all of them. The transit neighborhood would be the tallest at 108 feet. And again, that's if they really went to the absolute maximum on each one of those floors.
Mayor, does this remind you of anything?
Oh, a few years back.
We did Legos and we did this.
Yeah.
thing.
Same thing, yeah.
Same thing.
Great. These are just virtual Legos, basically.
Right, but that's
I
a
wasn't
little.
very good at it.
One of the things I want to point out is, because looking at Intermountain the other day, so the highest that the transit neighborhood could go is 108 feet. That is less than half of the patient tower that's currently there.
That's the tallest one.
The patient tower is 255 feet tall from the State Street side. And so it's. I'm just showing that, even in the transit neighborhood, the highest it could be is less than half.
What's that? The other tower they have, the smaller one, is 10 stories? What's that height?
That's another, I think that's more office. But yeah, that's a 10-story.
So that's gonna be roughly what they could, I guess we can only do 8 there, not 10.
Yeah, only 8, and then that is also it. And I'm measuring it. The patient tower I measured because you actually can see it from the State Street side. So when you measure it from that State Street side, it's 255 feet. Yeah, it's probably closer to 210 on the Cottonwood side. So yeah, it's still over 200 feet there. So yeah, your 10 is going to be significantly less. And that's at full commercial, heights. If you have a mix of like commercial on the ground floor and then residential on the upper floors, you don't build 12-foot ceilings in residential. That's just not done. You're usually about 9.
Yeah, that's an expensive building.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Zach. So again, the height study here is really just to kind of visually represent if someone were to max out, what would that look like? I wanted to mention this I just put in today. This is not in your packet, but we'll send out an updated PDF. This is kind of a summary from the open house we had on the 16th of September. I'd say the feedback generally was very supportive. I think there was a lot of interesting conversations around, how do we improve walkability? There was lots of discussion of, getting better pedestrian spaces, places that can kind of foster, restaurants, dining, entertainment, all of those things. Discussion of how do we balance new development with historic character, that's an ongoing conversation. A lot of questions about how do we activate ground floor spaces in buildings where we can have more small businesses, more local businesses, that this isn't a place where you're just going to have lots of non-local things going on. How do we create a city center that really feels like this is Murray, these are the places that people go, they've got visitors coming to town, where do you go to kind of have an experience? But I'll include this in the email packet. This was a summary that we just finished from those comments. I'd say in general, the height ranges that we had proposed here were generally supported. There were certainly questions about all of these things, but in general, I'd say the feedback was positive in general. Any additions to that? You guys were there first.
Yeah, no, it was interesting, and you're right, I think they were very supportive and happy that we did that.
Yeah.
That we had the open house, so I think it was a really good thing.
Yeah, and we sent out specific invites to property owners to say, hey, we know that code is a lot to process, but we want to talk about what we're doing. Other cities that have done form-based code, what results are they seeing? So it was, in general, I'd say a good open house. So, good. Well, I know that time-wise, we don't have a lot of time. What questions do you have that we can talk through?
Do you know how many cities in the state of Utah have form-based codes?
I don't know the exact number, but there's easily more than a dozen that have
Okay, so just 12, okay.
Yeah.
So do you see other cities going into this form-based code that haven't gotten it yet? Do you see other cities going this way?
Oh, sure. I think more and more cities are seeing what's happening in cities that are using it and trying to figure out how to make that happen. The first time I came to this meeting, we talked about Midvale City has been using one for about 4 years on their main street.
Right.
If you haven't taken a field trip yet to their main street, you know how dead their main street has been for the last 30 years. There's really a lot going on there. Mill Creek is developing a city center that is booming right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening there. They've moved their city center right to the middle, or their city hall to the
Right.
middle of that as well. Form-based code itself has been in use for about 30 years. In Utah, it's probably been about 20 years since Salt Lake City was the first to adopt one, and now other cities are.
Where's Salt Lake Cities?
They have a few.
They have a
They have
few. Yeah, the first they adopted was along 400 South, the Trax corridor. They learned some lessons with the first draft of that, and they've modified it a couple times.
Have you been to Central 9th? So it's the track station right on 9th South. That's all a form district as well.
Oh, like where Spy Hop is and all that.
Exactly.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, we are just wrapping up form-based code with Cottonwood Heights. They're kind of in the same place where they're trying to develop a town center.
Right.
So a lot of cities are looking at it because it's so focused. You can kind of say, okay, here are a couple areas in the city that we see a lot of potential. How do we update our code so that we know we can kind of codify those goals, and that when redevelopment comes along, the cities have that conversation as far as, okay, what's gonna happen? How do we concentrate in this place? How do we encourage property owners to get involved. And I think developing this type of vision for a specific area helps property owners out a lot because there's a unified vision of, okay, this is gonna be a real city center for Murray. How do we make sure that the code backs that up? It's not just kind of, zoning, for what it's worth, is not the best way to.
It just eliminates that process of the steps, is what I hear from people that
Yeah,
are owners, that it helps with that process and knowing exactly what they can and can't do.
yeah, and I think we want more predictability where the property owner knows what to expect.
Yes.
The city knows what to expect.
Yeah.
When you throw a link and 10,000 legal words at them on the online code,
Yes.
that's doesn't help anyone to do that. The prototype this we could talk about for an hour, but it's in your packet.
Right.
The prototype is really taking an example parcel and kind of saying, okay, in a form-based code, what are the questions that we ask? This is something that you can use, in perpetuity into the future to kind of show a property owner, okay, we're gonna ask about setbacks, we're gonna talk about building heights, we're talking about the form of the development. The last thing that you're really gonna talk about is use. The use, you've given them a lot of leeway to say, okay, here's how we're regulating use, but it's not the very first question. Really, the market, what's in demand, what they see is something that they can lease up or sell, or what's gonna pencil. That gives a lot of flexibility to a property owner where it's not, okay, well, we think it should be this, the market may not support that, so how can the city, require things? So giving more flexibility while also saying, okay, here are the things that we want in order to build into that unified vision.
I have a question. Can the legislators come in and say, we don't care, you have a form-based code, we want you to put X, Y, and Z in this certain area? Could they do that, even though if we have this form-based code and it's been adopted and it's in,
Sure. They can do a lot of things. So, I mean,
could they override the form-based code in certain areas?
Yeah,
This-
they could.
yeah.
They could. I don't think it's something that they would come in and say specifically, all form-based codes are gone. What?
No, I-
Specifically, I was on the Commission of Housing Affordabilities committee today, and I think they are going to be moving forward with a statewide density increase of +1 to +4 up zone to every city. They said that even outside of the League of Cities, they're still gonna push for it, at least from what I heard. So that's something
It's gonna come down the pipe.
that may
anyways.
come anyway. So you never know, they could say, all right, the whole city or all the cities in the state, you have to do +20 dwelling units per acre, for everywhere in the state. They could do that, but in reality, they probably won't.
Right.
But they're also encouraging the revitalization of the city
They are.
and housing. So it's not something that they're gonna slap our hands on.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Yeah.
it's been happening in other cities, fine. I know the county did one for Magna before it was a township.
Yeah.
A few years back, and
Yeah.
are they developing one, or are they gonna use?
That I don't
You
know.
do know.
That I don't know. I can find out. I think the legislature, it seems like there's a lot of talk and discussion around fixed rail service and recognizing that, okay, housing and all of that, really you should concentrate around this huge investment that we've made collectively. And so I think where last year, the year before, there was a requirement for cities to have kind of special area plans around fixed rail, where you've got, one of the few places where Front Runner and Trax are actually touching. I think you've got a lot of opportunity. If you have this vision and you're saying, okay, we're already allowing for increased density, we're trying to concentrate, make a more walkable place. I don't see the legislature coming back and having an issue with that.
Well, sometimes I don't trust those people.
I don't know that any of us trust them completely.
I've been up there for a year, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like, don't trust you.
Yeah, and I think housing particularly, we all know that housing is a big issue across the state. Where we're trying to encourage housing in the right locations, that's really what we're trying to codify here, is how do we focus in those areas?
Okay. Is there any other questions? Thank you, Adam and Diane, for being on this committee.
See you tomorrow.
This is wonderful, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives. Okay, our next discussion item is number 2, Power Department Quarterly Report with Greg Malone. Presenting, you have 20 minutes. Is there anybody here that you would like to bring up with you?
Yeah, Matt's gonna come up with me.
Okay. Hi, Matt.
Using that folder.
Good, how are you guys?
Here.
There yet?
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
M stands for
Walk away.
medical too, besides Murray.
Anybody know how to get this thing up on the?
Someone's right behind you to help you.
Isaac is the sinus fixer.
Okay.
He doesn't sail off and he gets you fixed. It's fixing, see? That's right.
Oh, we're unplugged. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Simple.
that's what IT always said to me, is a plug-in.
Turn it off and turn it back on.
I was just gonna say, that's what they always say.
Oh, a
Did you turn it off?
lighthouse.
Power cycle it?
Yes.
Oh.
Interface error.
Your time is now 6 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Really,
Talk
I'm
really
just.
fast.
We can talk. We can talk. I'm gonna let Matt talk for a minute. We have some good news that just happened today, so, our EDL, I'll let, we'll take his thunder, but.
Last quarterly reports we've given, we've talked about the landfill gas, the Trans-Jordan landfill gas plant that we've been renegotiating with. The original contract was with a company called EDL, and we've renegotiated, the original contract was with a company called Granger, who was bought out by EDL. So we've been working with them over the last, what has it been, almost a year now, 8 months.
Yeah, it's been a
And so,
process.
we were able to get that completed and renegotiated. We were originally looking at 10 years, ended up extending that to 20 years. So that contract's now been executed, and we're very happy about it. It's a great resource. And do you want me to talk about Truckee Donner as well?
Sure.
Before you go on track.
Yeah.
Yes.
What price did we get per megawatt?
They went back to 2014 pricing to start. And we'll have a 2% escalation after that, but it took it back into the realm of being affordable again, so.
Nice.
Very,
It was
very
I think,
yeah.
with GL's help on this contract and everybody involved, I think we came up with a very favorable deal for 20 years. And I think that'll probably could be end of plant, we're not sure, but they think they have gas for at least 20 more years. So.
Yay.
And we did, well, you can talk about Truckee too.
No, you go ahead.
Go for it.
What's Truckee? Give me just a 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
So Truckee is a UAMP city. Truckee Donner is a UAMPS. It's actually a utility district within UAMPS in the, what is it, Truckee, Nevada, I guess, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's why Truckee,
Yes.
I was gonna
that's why
say
it
that,
rings
but
a bell.
it's kind of like riding oh, we didn't pay the bill.
Power's on.
It's always,
It's on.
Who did
Doesn't that happen when you guys are
It does
here?
every time we're here.
Yeah.
everybody, wave your hands.
It's all good.
It's like the riding station.
So we've had an
Okay.
agreement in place with them where they were taking, it was about 70% of the energy from the landfill gas plants, from the Trans-Jordan plant. So we've renegotiated with Truckee Donner now to get where we have the option to keep the majority of that. And we can sell to them whatever we want, right? If it economically makes sense to do that. But we also have the ability to keep most of that energy now. And so we've have an agreement, an updated agreement with them now that stipulates all of that. And also an updated agreement where they will take our, what did we agree on, $5, I think, a rec.
Yeah, I think so.
We were negotiating back and forth, but the market value for those is when we sell them to trading companies is historically the last 10, 15 years has been around $1 a rec. So a renewable energy credit is something that we get that comes with every megawatt of energy that's generated at those landfill gas plants. So that's the green credit, right? And so we retain those, but now we have the ability to sell those at a contract price of $5 a rec with Truckee Donner, which is a great
Which
arrangement
they
as well.
need, right?
Yeah, and being in California in that area, they definitely can use those.
I'm so excited about that, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It's
I'm
great.
like,
We are,
I'm probably the most excited about
Yeah.
it, but yeah, it's awesome.
It could,
we're very excited about that, so thank you. Thanks for your support on that.
Yeah, I'm glad. And they were happy to negotiate
Was
from what I
large.
understand.
I mean, they were,
Absolutely. Yeah.
we gave them
Sure.
some, gave them some time to replace what they were buying from us, so they were very appreciative of that, so it worked out, it was very,
So let
Very
me just
good.
ask this question, just
Yes.
I'm trying to understand Rex. So we have renewable energy that we're doing, right? And we're saving, an energy form. But we can take the credit and sell to somebody who's not saving energy and having dirty energy and going, oh, look, we saved energy because they bought it from us?
that's the offset that's available right now, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying that. So
Yes.
someone can wave a green flag when they're actually pretty bad.
Oh,
That's
I
a-
think I see that all the time.
That's a good
Okay.
summary.
Yeah, that's
Clarifying that. I mean, it makes us money, right? But
it does.
Well,
And then
does it-
one day we might need those recs for our own,
yeah,
for if we have
it
to
just seems
offset
funny
our-
that we can.
I agree.
Help
Yeah.
them
Yep, I agree.
buying from us.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
look how green we are.
Is it, could it only happen within the UM's network or could it happen with other?
No, it could go.
But all the transmission, I mean, essentially, that we're using essentially a lot of the same transmission lines, kind of, in a way.
Well, so they're actually just buying the rec. They're not buying the energy from us. They're just buying.
Okay.
They're just buying a certificate that says that this represents 1 megawatt hour of
Got it.
clean, renewable
Got it.
methane gas.
Gotcha.
Okay. So right now, we're going to talk about UMs. So this was talked about at their annual conference, so as I got to be there. The first two right here, this is the natural gas that they're looking at right now. There's a combined cycle that will, there's peaking natural gas, nuclear, geothermal, solar plus wind. I heard that. And wind.
you know me, so.
Yeah, I know, and I'm okay with that. Let's talk about the natural gas right now. So we're in this study right now for this project. And we just got off a call, we had a call on Monday, GL was on that, and we participated, and we're gonna be looking at power sales contracts. So they're to the point where they've got to meet a deadline. A deadline kind of got moved up. I don't know if it was, I don't know, because of, I can say FERC, but it doesn't really mean a lot. But Rocky Mountain Power has, for something like this to happen, they have to do a study as far as transmission. I mean, there's so much involved in these big projects that there's got to be capacity on the transmission line. And you have to do all these studies. So to be able to get this study and get the line of credit that we need, UAMs, we're going to be talking about these. We'll be bringing this to you in November. I promise you, we'll get you some information. We'll meet with you and we'll get you fully up to speed on this. But it's a nice resource. So this one's it's a peaking resource. This is in Miller County. It's 200 megawatts. So this one, what happens is, we have our base load. Our peak hits like about now. This is our peak. So we have to have something that can follow our peak. And so this peaking facility is something that meets that. And so we had a forecast of about 11.3 megawatts in this. We don't know that we want to go completely that high. We're thinking more around 5 megawatts in this facility. And then we'll go to the next facility. There's up in Idaho, Power County. This is a base load facility they're talking about. It's 360 megawatts. And it's a combined cycle where they have a gas and a steam turbine, and they take their waste heat off of the turbine and boil water and create steam, and that drives one more generator, so it increases about 50% of what, so you're getting about 50% more of the fuel without having to actually, so it's really neat. It's kind of it's a good process.
Will that be in Idaho Falls?
Just out of Pocatello. We looked it up today, Howard County, but, so this is a base load, and they forecasted us at about 27 megawatts on this. So they did a long forecast out 24, 25 years. And so our Hunter plant will fall off possibly in 2032. That's our goal right now. And so we need something to replace that 22 megawatts. It could go a little bit longer. It just really depends. It's the future on that is, but I mean, we're at least maybe till 2032. But it's really up in the air. But so we thought 27 is a little bit high for us right now. We said we feel a little bit better about 20 megawatts. So we'd be into this project, 20 megawatts, peaker 5 megawatts. So that's a 25 megawatts increase when we're losing about 22 in possibly 2032. So I think it's a really good mix. I think it meets our resource. And there's something that we'll try and get you up to speed on is this resource adequacy requirements. That is something new that's going to start in possibly 2026, where you have to have 115% capacity. We'll talk about this in another meeting.
I stopped you because I looked at Jennifer. I shouldn't have done that.
No, I promise.
No, we're fine.
So it's just one of these things that it's really hard to explain in such a short time, but I promise we'll get you up to speed on that. But you have to have 115% of your resource, else you're going to get a penalty. So they're trying to protect the grid, right? So we will be a little bit long. I mean, we'll have resources that are 150% of what we need, but that's going to be a requirement that we're going to have to fill. So
I think they talked about that in one of the UAM's conference sessions that got deep into the weeds.
Yeah.
Yes.
That you may remember.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to the next US meeting because they said they would take it down a notch or two and really get into the weeds and help us understand it a little better.
And the acronyms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which the guy from California did great on those.
Yeah,
lots of acronyms.
So we'll talk about adequacy requirements and EDAM. So that'll be for another meeting. That's when we feel good about the future. I mean, I'm at GL today, and I kind of gave a bird's eye view of how power is generated and how it gets to us, and it's very complex. And so I think we'll maybe have a meeting where we just talk about electricity 101 sometime, and and just kind of build on that as a little at a time, because I think the more you guys understand electricity, because I love it. It's fun, and
Well, obviously.
but we'll get you to where you can understand some of these terms that we're talking about and our reliability and everything like that. But I think right now our overall our city looks good. We're making some changes. We're trying to get some things done, but I think overall we're looking good into the future. So, but we will definitely get you up to speed on this natural gas plant, because they're going to take comments until the 8th, and then we'll get a revised edition back on the 11th, and then we'll look at that, and then it's one of those really big things. So we'll kind of we'll make you read all that, but we'll go through and
Cliff notes.
We'll make sure that it covers what we need.
Power for dummies.
Is the natural gas the one in southern Utah plant? Or what are you talking about?
Also,
Location.
So there's a peaker plant in Miller County,
Okay.
and then there's this baseload plant is up in Idaho.
Yeah, okay.
So there's two different parts to this, and we're excited to be a part of this. So, do you have any questions on that at all?
No, but can I ask a question about the one that the state's trying to take from UAMPS or from us, or do you not know anything about it, or do you want to not step into that?
Well, I mean, so they had the special session, and I mean, there are a few things that I think we're okay with the way it is right now. It's not ideal, but it's better than it was.
Okay.
So I think we're okay. I don't know what's going to be in the future for that.
Where is it at now? If you can give a quick summation.
Well, they're almost ready to convert to natural gas, so.
So the plant is ready to
still,
convert,
the plant is still going forward. I mean, that's gonna happen. Unless something gets unraveled, but I just can't imagine they're gonna unravel
Right.
billions of dollars at this point,
Yeah.
so. I mean, that, when you start looking at air permits and stuff that's already taken place and trying to say, no, we're gonna go back on that doesn't work very well for, EPA and everyone else that's involved out there.
Yeah.
They made some concessions to be able to stay open longer and be able to shut down the coal plant and take over with natural gas and hydrogen. And when hydrogen comes available out there, then they'll slowly bring that into the mix and we'll see how that works too. So and we have over 30 megawatts in that plant. So
We have the largest, correct?
as far as the cities go, we do 4%. So.
That's 30 megawatts in the new plant too.
So the old one, we have 72 megawatts.
New one's
And this
30.
one's
Okay,
just 34, I believe, yeah. So it's still a good chunk and California can still use it and we can call it back. It's a little bit different. The callback's a little bit different than we've had in the past. Not as easy, but it's still there, which is amazing. So we're grateful to have that and that's just kind of the ACE.
How many resources do we have again in our portfolio total?
So
Is it 14?
we've got a few. Maybe not quite 14, but we have a good mix.
Okay.
A very
I
good
couldn't
mix.
remember. I thought it was
That's pretty
high.
close. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good job, Mayor.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey.
I listen, just real quick.
Oh, sure, go ahead, yes.
Just a big thing, JL doesn't like me to do this, but JL has spent every week with, these guys have a meeting with
Yeah.
JL every single week besides ours. And then I can blame it on JL, I'm just kidding. He's great, JL has just guided and it's been wonderful to have him represent. So I just wanted to give him a shout out and thanks Greg and Maggie, it's great.
Thank you very much.
And we're looking forward to those meetings.
Yes.
And then when
It'll
we
be
have
great.
that meetings, you could, when we're there, you can show us that board or whatever.
Sure.
Whatever that's,
Yeah.
the switchboard?
We're gonna set up some time.
Oh, that's gonna be a different one. So that'll be different.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah, come see
okay.
our dispatch center, central control. So,
Switchboard like a telephone, we gotta put.
Yeah,
We'll see
we'll
if we
bring
find
Bill.
something like that, so.
I'm going to,
Thank
because he
you.
can put it in my language.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to discussion item number 3, discuss an ordinance relating to land use amendments and zoning map from R-1-8 single family low density to R&B residential neighborhood business for the property located at 323 East Winchester Street, Murray City. David Rogers is presenting. Go ahead.
Hi, Council.
Hi.
Hello, David.
Good to see you. So I've got a rezone before you. It's about a third of an acre lot. It's going from R18 to RNB. The future land use map calls for this area to go from RNB. It's just north of Winchester. And so the idea behind this is to be a buffer between the single family homes to the north and the general office to the south. Several other properties on this area have already rezoned to RNB. And so this is just in anticipation of future development in that area to continue the buffer between the neighborhoods and the general office more to the south. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
We don't know what kind of business is going in there.
We do not, no. So we just have the uses that are in the R&B zone, but the regulations for things like height and setback are actually more restrictive in R&B than they are in R18. And the Planning Commission has a lot of discretion about what the design looks like in this area.
And I don't know if I should ask this or not, but I'm going to anyways. Did we get anything from neighbors or anything at all? Because there's a house that's next to it.
So we did.
Because that used to be my district and now it's Adams district.
So to the east is
Yes.
a business and they just tore down one building there in
Right.
the last month.
But then there's
To the
another.
west is a rental.
Oh, it's a rental.
So before Planning Commission, we got some comments. I think we got 2 comments asking
Yeah.
just what it was that was happening. And then we did get a comment saying that they weren't sure about it going forward. They were kind of negative against it. But we were able to talk to them a little bit.
It is a rather dilapidated property right now, so.
And it's on a busy street, Winchester. I'm looking at it on the map across from Red Robin.
Yeah, it's right across
Yeah.
from Red Robin and other office uses on that
That's
south
something they
side.
just changed that to R&B through that area.
Yeah.
Couple questions about zone hours requirements for an RMP. Isn't there specific hour requirements within it?
It's 10 to 7.
Or no, it's 7 to 10.
Yeah.
7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay. And then there was, am I remembering this correctly, comments about trees in this one.
I don't think there were comments about trees in
Am
this one.
am I mixing the next one with trees? The tree questions?
I don't remember
Trees.
trees.
Go ahead.
No, there was,
No, there was a comment about somebody who's like, I don't wanna see the parking lot.
I don't think that was in this one. It's not that I can recall.
Oh, I think I know what it
Yeah,
was.
it is.
It was the
There was a
lady.
comment from Ms. Thorne.
Yeah.
She said that she
Yep, you're correct.
is just general zone. Could we add a tree barrier requirement within the zone?
There already is.
There is.
There's a landscape buffer requirement.
Okay, so it's already in there.
Yeah,
So
what
they-
she was specifically upset about is the property to the west that's developing as an office already. And she was frustrated by that and came out and spoke at the rezone for a different
For
property.
this one about a different property.
That's right.
oh, it is, and I even circled it, it talks about the tree buffer, yep.
So there's currently a
Yes.
10-scape landscape buffer that's required between R&B and then residential is currently in the zone.
Because it says a tree buffer can be decided at a later date, and I circled, why later? Why not now? But we already have.
So the
Okay.
main thing is when we're rezoning, we're not looking at what the specific project is.
Got it.
And when they come forward with an application for a project, that's when we look at landscaping.
Oh, got it. And then Ms. Thorne asked what the space will be used for, and Vice Chair Hacker said this request is for a zone change and does not address a specific use at this point. And that is because why again?
So basically,
Because
what we're looking at right now is just rezoning the parcel.
Okay.
That doesn't tell us what they're actually going to do with it, so we don't know if it's going to be an insurance office or if it's going to be something like that.
Okay.
That's decided at the actual application stage.
Okay. Hey, any other questions, council? Okay, let's go on to number 4, discussing ordinance.
Thanks, committee.
Oh, geez.
He's done.
I did mine.
Zach's on his own.
I know, come on, 4 minutes.
Okay, discussing orders relating to land use amendments the zoning map from R-16 single family medium density residential to R-M-15 multiple family medium density residential for the property located at 4734 South Hanover Street, Murray City. Zachary Smallwood presenting, you have all of 2 minutes.
Yeah, so
Let me get to my page.
yeah, so it really is it's a property up here just north of City Hall. There are apartment uses that are non-conforming that are already existing in that area. The developer wants to come in and put in a triplex, and
Triplex is
3.
3,
yeah.
got it, okay.
So that's the most they could do on that property
Okay.
are 3 homes in the RM15 on this zone. So
Yeah, it's
I mean,
a small piece.
it's a very small
that's
piece. So
I was
yeah.
surprised they
Yeah.
could with that.
so questions, comments, concerns. That's all I can say.
How tall?
It's
Does it
this
allow? What's the height?
third. I think it goes up to 40 with planning commission
So like
approval.
2 stories?
3 stories. Yeah, 2 or 3.
What are the other apartments?
Two, they're 2 stories.
Yeah, they were built in like the 50s, if not before.
Was there any, I didn't see anything, but was there anything from citizens or anything like that? Because I
I don't
haven't
think
seen,
a single
when I was reading, I didn't make a tab thing, so.
Yeah, not a single comment.
And you'll let us know if you get any when you bring these to the committee of the whole.
Typically,
I mean, to the
yeah,
council.
typically I don't usually get them because they'll come to you after that.
Oh, it comes to
But
us. Oh,
but if I do get anything, then yes.
Yeah, okay.
So in the R16, they're just shy of being able to put 2 on that property. Like, got like 300 feet.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have no questions. Does the council have any other questions for this development?
No.
The triplex? Hey, if none, I will adjourn this meeting, and I want to thank Adam and Diane for being on the VODA form-based code. Thank you again. Hey, we are now adjourned. You have all of 1 minute to get to the next room. But we'll give you 10. Yes, we're giving everyone 10 minutes.